Hi, this is RX-Explain. This time I will explain the RX-79G Gundam Ground Type. Gundam Ground Type is a recycle project that validates a lot of things, but let's get started on how it came to be in the first place. The RX-79G is built using spare parts of the RX-78 Gundam. These parts were set to send off to Luna 2, but Zeon at the time had set up some very effective interception forces, making the shipment from Earth to space far too risky for something as important as the RX-78 parts. The famous 13th Independent Fleet, or the White Base and Field Support Crafts, was one of those several attempts to bypass the Zeon interception, but that's a story for another time. Nevertheless, most of the RX-78's parts are stuck on Earth. Federation Force was organized like our modern military, with Air Force, Army, and Navy under the Department of Defense, Earth, collectively called Earth Force following the reconstruction after the One-Year War. The Department of Defense Space commands the Independent Fleet, Garrison Forces, and Moon Force. However, these forces shared common originating equipment, and so they all called themselves Space Force before the One-Year War began. While both Air Force and Navy had little interest in mobile suits, despite numerous defeats, the Army, on the other hand, was very interested in the idea from the very beginning. General Reeve was not alone. And so the Federation Army started a limited production of RX-78 using these parts. They built these Gundams following Prototype Gundam, or RX-78-1 standard, partly due to the fact that they have been testing with Prototype Gundam on Earth, partly due to it being more modular in its design compared to RX-78-2. They also made a series of variations to optimize the effectiveness of RX-78-1 on Earth, but this video is about the RX-79G, so those would need to be saved for another time. The RX-79G is the result of what the Federation Army had learned with their development of RX-78-1 and its variants. Core Fighter is first thing to go. The Earth is far from inhabitable nor as being as hostile as the void of space, so an entirely independent operational jet serving as an escape pod is unnecessary. The weight and space saved for this change allowed the RX-79G to have a lot more functionality in the chest. The upper G motor and auxiliary thrusters are next to go since they are relatively inefficient on Earth with all the air resistance and gravity. They are also prone to be ingress point that requires a lot more attention and maintenance. Few of the upper G motors remain to work in conjunction with main thruster since the Earth has a lot of vertical obstacle even for 80 meters tall mobile suit. Another use for them are airdrop operations, but we'll talk about them with the airdrop pack. The Earth Federation Army kept the lunar titanium armor, at least as long as they did while stock last. With the weight saving from removal of core fighter and extra thrusters, the RX-79G can afford significant increase in armor, especially the chest and legs, since they are obvious targets. The construction of RX-79G is also further modularized since gravity weighs all parts down, so keeping modules small will make them easier to replace quickly or to be worked on in the field. Now that we have established the general direction the Federation Army is going for, let's take a closer look starting from the head. The RX-79G's head benefits from general armor increase compared to RX-78's. The helmet is visibly thicker. The Vulcans are moved to the side of the head as their own module for ease of maintenance, but most importantly for optional modules. Like this example we have here, it is swapped out with a periscope module on the left and enhanced communication module on the right. Although this is a G-frame, so I cannot demonstrate the periscope coming out. This is done because RX-79G already has Vulcan installed on its chest. Also, with interference of Minovsky particles, missiles are not as deadly But most importantly, the Federation Army planned to have traditional armor working in conjunction with the ground type. While Zeon's aerial arsenal is relatively unimpressive, but they do give the Federation Army a run for their money. But we'll talk about that when we look at ground type's arsenal. For now, just know that the Federation Army prefer to have more eyes and ears on the ground type's head. The RX-79G's torso, now with extra spaces saved from the removal of core fighter and the docking points, can install a single large radiator on one side instead of occupying both sides. This radiator can still be used as a makeshift thruster, but most importantly is that it can be removed independently with its armor casing. The other side is installed with a weapon module, with a Falcon and a grenade launcher. The hole on top is a casing ejection chute. While these modules can be mounted interchangeably and not limited to either side, they are generally being installed with radiator modules on the right and weapon module on the left. The RX-79G's arrangement for cockpit is pretty interesting as well. The red part is still the hatch, but instead of a slide, it hinges out as a ramp, although this is not the entryway that pilots uses. They prefer to use a hatch on top. This hatch is added mainly because a lot of Federation Army pilots were ex-tankers, and Army did think about using ejection seats like those on military aircrafts, but with increased armor, made out of lunar titanium no less, pilot survivability exceeds Army expectations. So Gundam Ground Type pilots jetting out of their cockpit is practically unheard of, although they were in danger by leaving the top hatch open because the Gundam Ground Type was still using the RX-78 space-oriented air conditioning system, meaning the pilot is well isolated and warmed, ideal in cold places but not so much in the jungle or desert. So they might go unbuttoned in marches and could be killed when ambushed. The skirts are more or less the same as RX-78 ones, with less apogee motors and propeller tanks. The side skirts are redesigned to allow them to hold extra magazines and grenades as well as weapons. The legs, especially the lower legs, is another distinctive feature of the RX-79G. A set of spikes is added to the knee pad for stabilization, especially when using heavy weapons. They can also be used for melee attacks. The rocket thrusters on the calves are removed, replaced with more substantial actuators and shock absorbers, improving RX-79G's leg physicality and durability, so it is better at walking, running, jumping, landing, and function as a stable platform. The auxiliary generators are also removed, replaced with a large mega condenser, since there are no rocket thruster to run and the main generator already has plenty of extra power. Beam saber holsters are also moved to the calves, since the Federation Army had a big plan with the backpack, and this allowed the beam energy stored in the mega condenser to be used directly for recharging the beam saber's E-cap. The RX-79G's arms are pretty much the same as RX-78's externally. Internally, they are redesigned into smaller modules with a structure designed to be more friendly to work with gravity, i.e. having weight-bearing structure built in the center instead of a cage behind the armor pieces. Yes, the root of movable frame goes all the way back to the RX-79G. Although this is a G frame, so I can't really showcase it, maybe one day for MG. A significant external change that can be easily spotted are the hanging bars on top of the shoulder armor. These are originally added for ease of maintenance. Again, because of gravity, it will be much easier to have a strong bond to hang up the shoulder or even the entire arm. And it would also be used for airdropping the Gundam Ground Type, either with an aircraft or parachute. Again, topic for another day. Due to these hanging bar structure's strength, they can also be misused as shoulder spike for tackling. Now we finally arrive at the part that makes RX-79G Gundam Ground Type such an iconic mobile suit, the backpack. While this backpack is much larger, it has slightly less thrust than RX-78's, mainly due to the fact that you can walk or run or even jump on Earth but not in space. So the main thrusters are mostly for extra boost instead of being primary mode of travel. The center of the backpack is a massive claw. usually used to carry a container unit either for carrying heavy weapons and their ammunition or supplies in case the ground type needs to be operated away from mothership or base for extended time. Another option is the airdrop and or parachute module, and those have several variants as well. The Federation Army even planned standalone weapon modules like an air defense system, but those are rarely seen. Now, all of those exciting options are not here, but that's not the limit of this backpack. This cloth can hold up tents on the comfortable side or use as gripping spike when descending down from a hill or cliff on the more thrilling side. A truly multi-purpose equipment. Oh, and it can also increase the surface area of the radiator on the backpack, but that's not very exciting. Actually, it allows the RX-79G operate much longer than contemporaries on both sides, this leading to them doing long marches and operating far away from base or mothership, but such operation endurance is not fresh enough to get noticed. And now let's take a look at RX-79G's ground type's arsenal, or rather what is available on this G-frame set. Like we talked about before, this G-frame here doesn't have Falcons on the head, but it can be equipped with a pair of Falcon modules on either side. The chest weapon module is equipped with a Falcon and a grenade launcher. The grenade launcher is loaded with an autoloader from a circular rack, which allows the pilot to select any of the grenades in the rack, which means RX-79G can be loaded with HE, hash, napalm, smoke, phosphorus, flash, chaff, etc., and the pilot can still select which one to shoot freely. The RX-79G isn't stuck with the standard Federation 60mm Falcon either. Both 12.7mm and 35mm are recorded. I would not be surprised that we find more variants using 20, 25, 40mm either, since the Federation Army was practically throwing every gun in their arsenal on the Gundam Ground Type. In fact, there are cases where instead of a grenade launcher, a second Vulcan is installed in the chest weapon module. The most common main arm of RX-79G is the 100mm machine gun. While it is more of a SMG, the 100mm round itself was designed as rifle rounds. It also has a wire folding stock, but it is usually not used as mobile suits generally have enough grip strength to keep it stable. But you will see Gundam Ground Type often fired with the offhand supporting on top with the shield covering the cockpit, which brings us to the shield. The RX-79G shield is the creation of the Federation Army. While the standard Federation Tower shield provides very large coverage, it is relatively heavy and unwieldy on Earth, especially in the jungles or urban areas where there are a lot of obstacles. And so the Federation created what would later be referred to as the ground type shield. Despite this design become very popular and used on other Federation mobile suits operating on Earth. The ground type shield is about half the size of a standard Federation tower shield with a handlebar on top and a spay at the bottom. This design is chosen so that the ground type can set up the shield on the ground as a mobile cover, especially with RX-79G's kneel down or crouch prone, or covering friendly supporting vehicles. There is supposed to be a folding bipod on the back of the shield, but on this G-frame it is made into a separate part. This is often how the shield is mounted, on the hard point on the forearm, with spay in line with the fist so that it can be used as an offhand melee weapon. The hardpoint is omnidirectional. The hardpoint is omnidirectional, so you may find the shield pointing downward at times, give better coverage to the cockpit. Another popular way to use the shield is to use it like a buckler, holding as far forward as possible to provide maximum coverage, which makes sense especially when you consider jungle or urban combat. Sadly, this G-frame does not provide a handle for this option. Another signature RX-79G Gundam Ground Type weapon is the 180mm cannon. Like any large caliber gun, the 180mm cannon has many shell types like the grenade launcher, although it is magazine fed, so pilot needs to change the magazine or remember what the loading order to fire the correct shell type. While this cannon has its own recoil absorption system, RX-79G often fired with both hands and in kneeling position, since this cannon is powerful enough to outrange the cannon used on battleships, while these ships operate on land or water. While it is often said the Gundam Ground Type would brace the 180mm cannon on its shields, it is actually a misconception, since the cannon is recoil operated, so bracing the front of the gun on the shield may cause malfunction. Gundam Ground Type would set the shield on the ground while using the 180mm cannon, mostly because they were using both hands to assemble the gun or they were setting up a firebase. The 180mm cannon can be taken down and stored in a storage container designed for the backpack, although this G-frame set does not provide for either. The cannon also has multiple carry handles for carrying if the storage container is occupied, absent, or even replaced by other modules. A pair of beam saber is stored inside the calves as mentioned before. Sadly, the hatch is inoperable on this G-frame. The rest of RX-79G's arsenal will be covered when I find those examples. The RX-79G Gundam Ground Type, like its RX-78-1 predecessors, is only a stopgap solution / on-field trial / push everything in the warehouse outside and hope for the best. It is estimated only about 20 RX-79G was made, however that's 20 too many for Zeon forces on Earth. However, the biggest contribution of RX-79G Ground Type to the Federation force, not just the Army, is that they established an effective design and production for all arsenals on Earth, allowing the Federation to quickly build up their mobile suit stockpile. Not quite as successful as the ball, but in due time. The lunar titanium stockpile ran out for the Federation Army as they began to push Zeon back to space, despite their impressive toughness. But the Federation Army had prepared the R-79G GM Ground Type, and they are designed to be fully compatible with the Gundam Ground Type. That's why you can find Gundam Ground Type in the later stage of 1 Year War with GM Ground Type parts like this GM Ground Type head here. There are also alternatives, and those would also be very interesting to talk about. All in all, RX-79G Gundam Ground Type is successful for being a weapon of war on the battlefield, as well as a pre-production trial machine for mobile suit production and development. While they are retired after the 1 Year War, its design will echo throughout the rest of the Universal Century. Thanks for watching.